This episode is sponsored by CertainTeed. 13 million tons of asphalt shingles end up in landfills every year. That's 2.6 million tons of recoverable asphalt binder, enough to pave 62,000 lane miles. With Renew Core by CertainTeed, that waste becomes a valuable paving resource. Licensed asphalt producers and C&D waste facilities can recycle asphalt shingles, free up landfill space, and replace costly virgin materials. Renew Core by CertainTeed. Recycling asphalt, reinventing roads. Learn more about how to partner with CertainTeed at certainteed.com/renewcore.
This is Pavement Black.
Hi, and welcome to Pavement Black, the official podcast of the National Asphalt Pavement Association. I'm Richard Willis.
And I'm Brett Williams.
And today we're continuing our conversations on leadership. Now, leaders can come from all kinds of different places and industries. Sometimes leaders come from within companies or grow up in an industry and kind of learn everything from the inside. And there are potential advantages or potential disadvantages from that. They may not see things in different perspectives. They may just know the way things are done. But there are other times leaders are brought in from outside and they can potentially see things a little bit differently.
Today, I'm really interested how experience can affect your career path and kind of feed into leadership opportunities.
So to help us with that conversation today, we've invited Maure Creager from CertainTeed to be a part of the podcast. Welcome to the show. We're really excited to have you on the podcast today. Can you tell us a little bit about the path you took to get to where you are today?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's been a little bit of a different career path than what I would have imagined coming out of school. So after school, I went to work for a design build engineering firm, designing power plants, which obviously now in my role of sustainability is interesting because I was working on power plant system generation versus reduction of energy. That was a design build firm. So we designed the entire plant and then we're responsible for building and commissioning it and turning it over as a fully functional power generation system. And to me, as a new engineer coming out of school, that was really interesting and informative work, because when you're designing something, you don't usually get to go out into the field and see how it works or how it's being built, but it allows you to really understand the challenges that the trades have as they're building it, and then you can make better designs as you're going forward. After that, I got married and we moved to Minnesota, and I was able to join a startup firm as an R&D engineer or product development engineer for an electrochromic glass product, which is a product that probably a lot of people in this industry haven't quite heard of, but it's like the transition sunglasses, but for buildings, where it's blocking the light and the heat. It was a startup, so you have to have a very entrepreneurial spirit. You have to be very fluid and see problems as they're coming and be able to quickly move and navigate with those. I was with that company for about 17 years, so I was able to see it grow from a party of 20 in the company to a party of 500, and being a global product, being able to really support that. And along that time is when I really developed a lot of my sustainability expertise, because I was their main person for sustainability and material transparency. And now I'm leading the circular economy efforts for CertainTeed Roofing. And that has been a great learning experience for me as well, that has really allowed me to translate a lot of the experience from previous.
So given your background in engineering and sustainability, and also given the broad perspective across the many industries you just shared, could you maybe talk about how that's kind of helped you through your career and help shape your approach to your current role and how you lead your team?
Sure. I think leadership qualities, personalities, what makes a good leader translates to whatever industry you're working in. A great leader is a great leader. It doesn't necessarily matter what industry they're in. It's really about the qualities that person has. Perhaps there are some qualities that are more relatable to some of the team members as you enter that industry, but otherwise, I think a good leader is a good leader. In my current role, I think what's been really interesting to see as we talk about this word sustainability, the word sustainability means a lot of things to a lot of different people, and it usually doesn't mean the same thing to me as it would to you all, right? It could mean very different things depending upon our life experiences and our education and our background. But usually there is always something that we can agree on that we are trying to do. At the end of the day, when we think of sustainability, we usually all can come to agreement that we want our business to be successful and be able to keep moving forward today, but we also want to make sure that we're setting our business up for success in the future and being able to continue to move that forward, which is essentially what sustainability is, right? We're trying to make sure that future generations are able to do what they need to do with the resources available to them.
So when you were going through your background and kind of your different experiences throughout the career, the one thing I noticed was you never really mentioned the word asphalt until you got to where you are right now. And
Yep.
so you really entered this space without a whole lot of knowledge on the industry and have quickly had to gain expertise to be able to lead some of these efforts. And so what's helped you the most really in this kind of learning journey so that you are in a position where you can be seen as a leader in this space?
You're right. I had never worked in asphalt at all or roofing when I entered this space. And honestly, when I took this position, we thought it would be doing more roofing work, right? And that is part of my job. I do manage the circular economy efforts for the entire business. So we're working on circularity efforts for shingles themselves. But it's a lot of shingle into paving is really what my focus is on today. And you're right, I did not know a thing about asphalt or roads or transportation really before this at all. But I'm really curious. I like learning, and I find relationships to be key whenever you go into a new industry or a new business development or whatever you're doing. It's really developing those relationships. I try to be very humble. I know that while I may have been an industry expert in electrical and glass, I will never have 45 years of asphalt experience or probably ever operate a hot mix asphalt plant in my lifetime as well. However, I am a technical problem solver at heart. So being able to really dig in and be curious has helped me to learn quickly. When I first entered the industry, I attended a lot of meetings and conferences, events, just to learn. I didn't talk. I asked a lot of questions very quietly and really built a network of industry experts that I could reach out to and ask questions from. And those people have been incredibly willing to share their knowledge with me and teach. So I can bring in my expertise that I have to be able to develop new businesses, grow products, bring the sustainability knowledge in, and my leadership qualities. I've been incredibly blessed to be on and to lead some great teams of truly amazing people over all of those different organizations that I've been with, including the one that I'm on today and that my team that I lead now. They're really quite incredible. Just the openness of people to be able to share and collaborate has really, I think, helped me to move really quickly into this space and learn a lot about it.
So you had an experience to really gain some knowledge from industry veterans, but I'm curious if that experience of interacting with those experts in the industry has influenced your leadership style or kind of how you approach your career.
I definitely have learned from our past leaders and what I'm going to take away from them and what we're not, right? I think it's really important to learn from the past. We all know the past problems that have happened with other products that are not typical asphalt paving products going in, and shingles being one of them. And how do we learn from that and ensure that the future products are solving those problems that happened in the past? And I think that's really important to learn in whatever industry that you go into, right? Is to look backwards and really understand the history, which helps you to not repeat the same mistake going forward. Because I think we can see that, again, as we look at different leaders that maybe have led us, if they've come in with no experience and they don't look backwards, we've probably seen them repeat something that we saw happen behind us. And that just wastes time and money. So we might as well make sure that we know what happened in the past to be able to make good decisions going forward. We have all worked with great leaders that we really admired. And maybe we only admired certain qualities and maybe we didn't like other things. And by now in our careers, we've all worked for people that we're thankful have moved out of our orbit. And that's okay too. And so you take those experiences and learn from them. And for me, it's all about, does it resonate with me as a leader or not? Is it how I would want to be treated as a team member or not? The way that I treat or lead my team is how I would also want to be treated or led. I have learned to be incredibly transparent with my team and stakeholders. As much as I can share with them, I'm going to. And I think that really helps to ensure that we're all on the same page. We understand the risks and the rewards. We hear a lot that our people are our greatest resource, but it's sometimes really easy to forget that once we get to a higher level and we're looking at KPIs and the business drivers and what needs to change and how fast we need to move, remembering that our teams are really what makes it work.
You mentioned a lot of what you're doing right now is related to circularity. And a lot of times when people talk about circular economy, they're talking about materials. But how can some of those principles be applied to kind of leadership or even business strategy?
So when we think about circularity, it's a broad term and it can be interpreted a couple of different ways, similar to sustainability. But the way that I simplify it to myself is my role is really to figure out how we can, within the CertainTeed roofing business, take shingles back into themselves. So it's a composite product that would then be somehow deconstructed and made into a new product, a new roofing product. Or if we cannot do that, or we cannot do that with all of our product, how do we then find other solutions that are themselves circular? So when we look at paving and the use of wrap, we know that is a circular product. We hear it all the time that asphalt pavement is the #1 recycled product in the world. And so being able to find other materials that then continue that cycle of being recycled is really critical. And what circularity is, it's not just a 1 reuse or a 2 reuse, that would be recycling, but really perpetual. I think when we think about business strategy, it's usually our leaders that are putting those strategies in place, right? And whoever is creating that strategy or looking forward to that long range plan is key. We need to make sure that we're able to continue to move the business forward and hopefully grow it. So in manufacturing or in businesses where we consume raw materials, one of the key factors that we're looking at is the risk and long-term consistent supply of your raw materials. And that's something that I think people are perhaps more aware of now after just going through COVID and supply chain issues that we had at that time. But even looking further out, 15, 20, 30 years, do you know that you're going to be able to consistently get the materials that you need for your product? Again, if you're thinking about the continuity of the business and how to continue to grow it, we know consumers and the market in general is really looking for more durable and more resilient products. And so how do we continue to design those products to last longer and to be more easily maintained? And I think that's true in any industry, right? We're seeing that with the perpetual pavement work that's happening and being discussed today in this particular industry. We're constantly looking at all of our different products and how do we ensure that they're able to either be repaired, which is a kind of going back to how our grandparents thought about things, or lasting longer. And I think that will continue.
We're going to take a quick break and hear a message from our sponsor.
Did you know that 13 million tons of asphalt shingles end up in landfills every year? That's 2.6 million tons of recoverable asphalt binder, enough to pave 62,000 lane miles. But what if we could turn that waste into a valuable resource? RenewCore by CertainTeed is an innovative pelletizing technology that diverts asphalt shingle waste from landfills, repurposing it into valuable, effective asphalt for paving. With RenewCore technology, licensed asphalt producers and construction and demolition waste facilities can now recycle asphalt shingles, freeing up landfill space and replacing costly virgin materials in asphalt production. The paving industry no longer has to choose between performance and sustainability. With RenewCore, you get both. Learn more about how to partner with CertainTeed at certainteed.com/RenewCore. RenewCore by CertainTeed. Recycling asphalt reinventing roads.
So I want to circle back to a question that you answered before, and you touched on just the importance of embracing or raising up different approaches or different thinking. And great leaders really do surround themselves with people who think differently. Could you maybe share how you create a culture where diverse perspectives really drive better decision making in the business?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly critical for us to surround ourselves in life and in work with people that think differently than us and have different experiences than us. That's how we become very close and narrow-minded, is if we're only around people that are exactly like we are. So for me, it's really important to ensure that your team shows a diversity in all of those things: background, thoughts, experiences, education, and bringing all of those different people and different experiences to the table helps everyone to have a much more well-rounded understanding of whatever the topic is that you're talking about, because we all have different perspectives on it, which helps us make better decisions, whether it's me surrounding myself with, a diversity of thought, or the group making a decision. When you talk about creation of a culture, sometimes people may not see the value of that, right? And we can think about that in a lot of different ways. We can think about that as bringing the guy that is an operator into one of the management meetings and hearing what he has to say about something. That's a different thought that perhaps is not normally in that meeting. And I bet we'll learn something from that person coming to that meeting. And so people may not think that person needs to be at the meeting to start with, but by bringing them there, letting them share their voice, and then showing how their voice is impacting the decision or the difference or whatever you're talking about, helps to bring value to that person and show the value. And that's how you start to create the culture of change and value of difference of thoughts. I think it's really, you bring them to the table and then really show their value.
So I think for the next few questions, we may go a little bit more personal and less kind of business high level thinking, but a lot is learned from the experiences that we have, and sometimes that shapes how we grow and how we lead. And a lot of times we're really comfortable and we really like talking about things that go right and what we learned for them. But can you share a time when something didn't go as expected, or when you faced a failure, and what did you learn from that experience, and how does it shape kind of your outlook today?
I have had more failures probably in life than wins coming with a startup program. You learn a lot. There's a lot of failures that come as you develop a new product. I can't think of one perfect, great example of it, but I know that as we were developing the first product with Sage and putting it out onto the market, we learned a lot. We had done a lot of accelerated lab testing, but it was the first time it was going into the field. And it was the first time that we were producing it. And as you know, when you're going into production for the first time, your estimates of when you can actually deliver may or may not be correct. And we were wrong a lot with what we were doing. And so I was the leader of that team. And so I was the one that was making the phone calls to a lot of different construction projects, telling them that their product was going to be delayed. And sometimes we were delaying it. It wasn't days, it wasn't weeks, it was months or several months. And it's hard to deliver that message, right? And it's hard to get the feedback from people who are yelling and swearing at you on the telephone, telling you the impact to their project, because it is an impact to their project. And it's a cost impact, it's a labor impact, it's a schedule impact, it's huge. But what you learn from that is, or what I learned, is really to separate the business side of things from the personal side of things. It's really easy to take it personally when someone's yelling and screaming at you and swearing at you on the phone, and to take that personally. And you're doing everything in your power to solve the problem for them. But at some point in time, you just can't take it personally, and you just need to move forward and solve that problem. I think with that, you learn how to stay calm in the situation, which is huge, right? We've all worked for leaders and people and managers that don't stay calm in the moment. And that doesn't help anything at all. Like blowing up and me getting all up in arms is not going to be the thing that solves the problem. So staying calm is really important. You definitely take away resiliency, right? Like having those situations over and over again make you a more resilient leader, and you're able to see the broader picture. You understand your customers' issues a little bit more, which is always, the more you can understand your customers, the better. And then I think in general, it's just recognizing in that situation, there's no one to blame, right? It just is a product of the process and how things are moving forward. And so making sure that you aren't placing blame, that you're just acknowledging the situation, figuring out how to solve the problem, and then moving forward is really critical. I think there's a lot of value in looking backwards. I love lessons learned and postmortems. I think they're incredibly useful. I don't know if they're used as much as they used to be, but I think they're really helpful in creating a culture and creating a team when you're able to openly and regularly look backwards and recognize what went well and what didn't go well and learn from that, and then allow the team to really take that and move forward. It's incredibly powerful. The team then has ownership over how and what changes are made going forward because they've recognized what happened in the past and have insight and decision-making authority in how we're changing and moving forward in the future. And to me, I think that really helps you to create a strong team because they see the problem and then they see how we're going to solve it and move forward in the future.
So I think you touched on it, and we've all had that experience where we've been around a leader that maybe, we are not that upset when they're not in our universe anymore. But I guess I would be curious if you could share some skills or qualities that you see that really differentiate between good and great leaders.
Yeah, that's a really good question. All of our leaders have to be able to clearly articulate the vision of where we're going to us. But when I look back at the early days of Seizure, when we were starting that company, our CEO and the founder was incredibly inspiring, right? He just needed to talk to us for 10 or 15 minutes, and we all were renewed and impassioned about moving forward, even if something awful had just happened. And so I think the ability to really inspire your team to keep the vision moving forward is incredibly powerful in a great leader. Truly listening, being empathetic, and connecting with your team or your organization on a personal level is also very important. Just knowing somebody's name is not enough. You should know them, right? Because that's part of being a great leader, is knowing your team really, really well and picking up on those cues on when things are going great and when things aren't. Some of the other key qualities I think make a great leader: having really great integrity, right? Like good leaders maybe have integrity, but just like never wavering from your ethics and your integrity is important. Having the grit to be able to do that is incredibly important. And then maybe the last thing is we all look to our leaders to be decision makers. And this is a technical field. We all love data, and we all want all of the data to be able to make a good decision before we're able to move forward. Sometimes we don't have all of that. And so a great leader trusts their gut, their intuition to be able to move the decision forward. And not everyone is willing to do that. So I think that's another differentiator.
That reminds me of something that was said at our annual meeting in a previous podcast this season, that one of the qualities of a great leader is to start before you're ready. And sometimes you've got to be willing to do that.
Yep.
And it's tough, but it's interesting to hear different people echo similar things as we're going through different conversations. And this next question is, it's how I really got to know you. And that is talking about our Road Forward program. And we've seen that CertainTeed and Saint-Gobain are involved in that initiative. And why do you think that it was important for your company to be a part of this program or this vision for where the industry could be?
Yeah, I agree. That's where we probably met the first time. And I think it was in our first SNAPA meeting that I attended that I learned about it. And I was like, why aren't we in this? And how do I get into it? And I think I asked to join mid-year, which wasn't really allowed, but we were trying to get in. The reason why is because I feel very strongly that it's important for us to support the initiatives that we believe in. And the Road Forward and the goals and the mission of the road forward very much align with the mission of Saint-Gobain and CertainTeed and where we're all moving forward. It also aligns well with our waste diversion and circular economy goals. But from a personal standpoint, I think it's really important for us to come to the industry. We are new in the industry, right? Nobody knows who we are. And I want everyone to recognize that we're coming to them not as like this drop-in manufacturer that's just trying to sell a new technology. I'm really looking to partner with the people and figure out solutions. I think that's something that the curiosity and the problem solving and recognizing that the goals that we're putting out there are really hard and the time is ticking, right? We're much closer to 2050 than we are to 2000 at this point in time. We all remember the fear of Y2K, and that was nothing compared to what we can imagine for 2050. And so we need to move, and we need to move quickly. And therefore, supporting initiatives that are helping to move that forward is incredibly important, and being a part of them is really important. We can, again, diversity of thought and experiences allow us to be able to move forward more quickly and make those changes happen faster.
So I'm curious maybe to go a little deeper and see what you think leaders can do to really position their companies to not only adapt to the changes of 2050 or Y2K or any of that, but go even beyond and really have their companies drive innovation and lead the industry forward. Are there things that the leader can do to really position the company to be successful in that way?
We all know companies that have been around 50 years that are doing the same thing they were doing then, right? There hasn't been a lot of change. They have their niche product, they have their region that they support, and they're cool with that. They're probably not looking for significant growth. So in that case, they're probably not going to really adapt to change. But if you want your business to grow, you need to have forward thinking to really innovate to be able to do that. I don't think that there's any way for a business, especially in this particular industry, to be able to grow your business would have to require innovation.
So when you think about our conversation and about your journey as a leader, could you maybe share some advice for our listeners that you think is something they can take away that's, important in their leadership journey as they try to move up in their career and take on more responsibilities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love it. For me, as I've gotten older, I have realized I know less. And so I would say stay curious because there's always more to learn, but yet also know yourself and trust your instincts. There comes a time when we're like middle managers where we think we know everything, and then we learn we don't, and there's more to learn. And I think that is incredibly powerful as we become leaders and are leading our teams.
Maure, we really appreciate you spending the time with us today and being on the podcast and your insights as someone coming into the industry. You kind of laid out a blueprint for people coming in, how to get involved and how to find their place. But we continue to look forward to working with you and CertainTeed in these programs moving forward. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you. Enjoyed being here.
I think one of the things that I take away from this episode is at the beginning of the podcast or beginning of the conversation, we were talking about like different industries and what leadership qualities can we bring in from the outside. And her reality is like leadership is leadership in many cases. And there might be a few nuanced cases where a certain industry or a certain group needs a certain spark or a certain quality to really help everything rise up. But leadership translates. And you actually see that in a lot of the business world today, where someone may start a typical type of a company and then they go to somewhere else completely that has nothing to do with what they've been doing in the past, and then they are successful. And so I think that should be exciting and that should give us hope when bringing people in or even looking to the outside for advice on how to grow leaders. Is a lot of the things that we've been talking about this season are not just in the silo of the asphalt industry. They are across the board in terms of what a leader should be.
I think my big takeaway from the conversation is just how important curiosity really is in our careers, in our career paths, in our journey, in meeting people, in realizing that the people that we surround ourselves are really critical to our success and to making ourselves better and to learning. And I think that's something that maybe isn't always the first thing we think of, is just how important it is to stay curious, to realize that there's more to learn, that the people we surround ourselves are great assets when we approach problems or have questions or don't know everything. So that was really a point that kind of resonated with me today.
Thanks for listening to Pavement Black. Visit asphaltpavement.org/podcast to find more episodes, suggest a topic or guest, become a sponsor, or learn more about Napa. Pavement Black is produced and copyrighted by the National Asphalt Pavement Association. Music by Colleague. As always, thanks to the dedicated workforce connecting diverse communities all across America.